We have a brain, a jock, a princess, a basket case, a criminal, and 2 podcasters. This is the Breakfast Club on BreakCaZt. And welcome back to the BreakCaZt, here on this special 80s edition of the BreakCaZt. I'm Steve Z here, the man who put the Z in BreakCaZt. Along me with is...
I am the Super Foch, the man who put super in BreakCaZt.
How you doing today, buddy?
Dude, I am so excited about this film. I cannot wait to talk about it. It's one of my favorites. It's a really, really interesting look into 1980s, and really excited to talk about it.
Me too. This is one that I think is a cable movie is what I would call this. Because it was on all the time growing up.
Yes,
so I'm pretty sure you're like me. That's your introduction to it.
Yes.
Watching it on TV, having everything bleeped out, hearing like, "You airhead, freak you," stuff like that.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, the movie grew on me, and especially when I was like, I saw this as a preteen, and it just spoke to me a lot, especially my high school years. And that's why I was kind of actually hesitant to watch this one again, because I was thinking maybe it's not as good as I remember. Maybe you have to be in high school or be of that age to appreciate it. Was I right?
We'll find out. But before we do, my friends, we want to thank everybody for listening. We really do appreciate all the support we've been getting. And if you would like to join us, feel free to on Twitter. Just go to @BreakCaZt with the Z, as well as our Facebook group. Just go to facebook.com and search BreakCaZt with Z. And all of our episodes we do upload onto Spotify. So just go to spotify.com and search BreakCaZt, and you can hear this one when we put it up, as well as all our others that you may or may not have listened to before. We do appreciate all the support, and we look forward to giving you guys many more shows. So come join us, and let us know if you have any suggestions on future episodes, because again, we're open to suggestions. But today, whenever you're listening to this, we're going to talk about a really, really classic film. As we said, The Breakfast Club, and this movie came out in the 80s, and of course that's even before Steve and I were in high school. I don't think, were we even born when this movie came out?
It came out in 1985.
Right, same
Makes
year.
it a very special movie.
We are old as the Breakfast Club. Has an amazing cast. I love every character in this film, and it almost has a little bit, if you'll excuse the comparison, of 12 Angry Men, because it really only consists of this little space here and all these people. I mean, yeah, they go dancing around in the high school at some point, but it's really the crux of the film is in that room. And you know, for somebody to suggest that and be like, yeah, people are going to sit there and listen to these guys for an hour and a half or 2 hours talk, you know, it wouldn't sound appealing, but it really, really, really is. It really is. So, we're as old as Breakfast Club, so it's been out for a while, so we're going to go ahead and say, hey, we're probably going to spoil everything about this film, just because it's that old. So if you haven't seen this film and you don't want to be spoiled, go watch it, come back and listen to this. We'll be here when you're ready.
Yeah, starting off, you kind of took it where I was going to start off, so that's great. So this film, to me, has kind of like a play feel to it. Like, you can see somebody doing this on stage.
Right.
I'm not going to say it's claustrophobic, because you are stuck in this room. If you're not familiar with the premise of the film, it's these 5 individuals, these 5 high school kids. They've been sent to Saturday school. They had to be there at 7 a.m. and they're going to be there all day. And they're stuck in this library together. It's supposed to be working on an essay, but as you'll see in the film, they don't really work on that too much. And it's just all about them getting to know each other, learning about themselves, learning about their parents, and just really, as the film implies, they're becoming real people. Because, and that's what we'll get into a little bit toward the end of some of the themes of this movie, because definitely a deep movie.
Yeah, definitely, especially for a teen film. There's been a lot of those over the years. There was an explosion of those when we were quote-unquote teens. But this one, I feel like, started all of that and really explored what it is to be a teenager, what it is to be a young person, and trying to find your identity, trying to find who you are. And I think that's one of the great things about this film. There's so many different types of people within this movie. I mean, you have the jock, you have the nerd, you have the princess, you have the emo girl, and I guess they know of each other at the start of this film, but they don't really know each other at all. Like, they're basically, strangers to themselves, to each other, until the end of the film. And it's just a really interesting thing. What was your impression of this film growing up, and what's your impression now, if there's a difference?
Yeah, so like I said, I watched this film a lot growing up. I remember the first scene I ever saw in it was the "I'm gonna be a airborne ranger." And like Judd Nelson's running down the hall, gonna go practice some hoops because he's trying to basically save the other group and take one for the team. And I'm like, just dropping this movie. I'm like, this is kind of funny. This guy's talking about getting a scholarship and all this stuff. So I stuck with it because Judd Nelson as Bender it just kind of appealed to me. I was just like, this guy looks ridiculous. Yeah. He's acting ridiculous. Let's follow this movie out. Mm-hmm. And then I got into I think I watched a few more of the deeper scenes, or the next big scene was whenever Vern, the principal, corners him in that closet and basically has a pretty scary moment with him, where he just tells him this is what your life's going to be like in 5 years,
right?
And asks him to take a swing at him and really threatens him. It's scary stuff. Yeah. So I'm like, this movie's crazy. It just went from really being funny to pretty intense, like in the matter of 5 minutes. So I always like movies like that, even as a kid. So I was drawn to it. So anytime it was on TV, I wouldn't watch the whole thing, but I definitely caught enough of it to get appreciation for it. And nowadays, I mean, I just watched it for the first time in probably maybe 15, 20 years or so. I don't know. It's been a while. And I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did. I really enjoyed it. I think, although it does have some pretty questionable things in it, such as the initial quote by David Bowie at the beginning, I'm like, okay, so why are they showing this? And then it has a random smash cut where literally the screen explodes and you're in high school and you're watching. It's basically it looks like a murder mystery thing at the beginning. It's like a crime scene you're watching. But it definitely picks up from there. I think it's at its best when it's just letting the actors do stuff and breathe and talk with each other. And I think that's what makes this movie very unique, is that whole experience. Is I guess John Hughes, when he sat down to make this one, he wanted it to be different than his other films, and it definitely is. Yeah,
for sure. I think it does a really good job. And first of all, you can't say enough about each actor that plays these kids. Guy plays the principal's awesome too. He's definitely the cliche horrible principal, but the kids is what this movie is centered around, and they just really knock it out of the park. You have Emilio Estevez, you have
Anthony Michael Hall, you have Molly Ringwald.
Yep, Molly Ringwald.
Judd Nelson, and of course Ali Sheedy.
Did any of those roles speak to you personally then, and did the same role speak to you personally now, or how was your experience with that?
Yeah, so I was probably not like any of these characters really. I'm kind of like a mixture between a few of them. So I guess I'd be the sixth character that showed up for attention that day. But I don't know. None of them really speak to me, but I can identify with them and sort of their issues with their parents, especially in particular Andrew and Brian, who have a lot of pressure to live up to their parents' expectations. Andrew's got to be the best wrestler. He's got to always be in tip-top shape, and it really stresses him out, as we find out later. Is He's just hoping that he gets injured one day and doesn't have to wrestle again. So that way his dad would just back off of him and let him be a kid. And the same thing with Brian. I mean, the guy was going to kill himself over an F in shop. He was just like, I'm not going to get any good colleges now. My parents are going to kill me. And I think that's something that I think a lot of kids put a lot of pressure on themselves like that. But in this case, it's the parents putting it on them. So that's even worse.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I'd be somewhere in the middle too. And what I find interesting is, these characters know each other as far as they know they exist in the school, but they don't really know each other on any sort of personal level, or at least I didn't get that impression at the start of the film. And they have all these misconceived notions about each other, and it just reminds me of, and I'm going to tell this quick, I have this one story that really made me think. Years and years ago, when I first started in JSU, I knew this person in choir, and they seemed to be a certain way, and I perceived them to be a certain way, but not only me, but some other people. They would say stuff, and I'd just be like, yeah, they're stuck up, they're this, they're whatever. And one day I was like, no, I'm going to break this. I'm going to say, I'm going to find out the truth. So I don't remember if you remember, but went to the movies one weekend in Anniston, and she was there serving cotton candy, I think it was. And I'd never spoken to her in my life. I had prejudged her, and so I was like, I'm just gonna go say hi and see if she's actually friendly. Well, she was friendly, really friendly. And we talked about the movie. I don't even remember the movie I was gonna see. She's like, tell me how that is after you see it later on. And had every intention of doing so. Well, she dies in a car wreck over our Christmas break. And in fact, it was right before we came back. And so we're singing at her funeral. This girl that I had preconceived notions about, realized she wasn't anywhere like people had thought. And I was just so thankful I had that episode in the theater that I could cleanse myself of all of that. And I think that's kind of what this movie does too, is it kind of washes away all these stereotypes, because each one thinks the other, has this stereotype. And so, what does the good-looking girl have to worry about? What does the jock have to worry about? But in truth, we all have things like that. And I think that that's what this movie does super, super well throughout it. And it's a little bit ahead of its time, if you ask me.
Yeah. I mean, like you were saying, it was a teen movie. This is like beyond teen movie as far as what teen movies are trying to do. That's why it's very unique. Like I was saying, it's mostly dialogue. Nowadays, they would call this like a hangout film, because there's no major conflict. There is no like, we have to defuse a bomb before 10 o'clock, or we have to steal the answers to tomorrow's test, or anything like that. No, they're just sitting here hanging out. I guess they eat lunch. They get some pot out of the locker and they smoke it, and then they just talk. And I think it's really cool because, like you're saying, they finally, not only are they honest with each other for the first time, I think they get honest with themselves and realize who they really are. Because I think a lot of times at this point in your life, you're looking for a label, if you will, or a crew to hang out with. And that's a trap that a lot of people fall into.
Yes.
But this movie's saying, no, you just got to be a person. And I think the sooner you learn that lesson in life, the better off you are. And I'm glad these kids get to learn that. And it comes in a pretty unique way. I mean, I'm not going to say it happens just because they smoke pot. It's because they're talking with each other about real stuff. That scene, or that just series of scenes, I guess, is pretty amazing.
And that's the thing, like I said, and I didn't mean for this episode to be all about me or anything, but that's something I thought about, that experience. And I think we've all done it, even subconsciously, where you look at someone and you perceive them to be a certain way. You go, and it's wrong, I admit it can be wrong and everything, but you just do. But what this movie does teach, and what I thankfully did, is if you communicate and if you talk to someone, you'll get the truth. the truth will come out, and you'll find out, is this person what I thought that they were? And I think that's what this film kind of teaches, is to talk and to give each other, patience and understand my life may not be like yours, but I still think like you. I still worry like you. I still have all these feelings that you have, even though we don't share the same household or whatever. And I think that that's a brilliant lesson for not just kids then, but for now and for the future.
Yeah, and it builds up to that. Like, the film it's very tightly paced for an hour and a half, even though I said not much happens. But we do get a lot of character development. I mean, as soon as the moment they show up, we see them getting out of their cars. We can learn a little bit about them. We see what their interactions like with their parents, or in the case of Allison, we see the lack of parents. So same thing with Bender. We see the lack of parents. But then we learn more about them, and I think Bender is kind of like the big character early on in the film. He's the one that's definitely out there doing the most, and he's the one that I think he's putting at the biggest front. He's pretending to be tough. He's pretending that, his life at home probably does suck, but as much as he throws it out there, who knows? But he's definitely a hurt individual, and I think he feels like he has to act this way, and everybody judges him by that. They don't realize that this guy's actually a pretty complicated individual and a pretty cool guy to actually know that he can be real with you. And I think that's what it's all about. Once they get past this guy's a criminal. As Andy says, you're just a wastoid. I would like to lay you out. If we weren't in school right now, I'd waste you. Yeah. He's like, that's the way they start off. They're very confrontational, but eventually they become friends.
And the chemistry between all these guys, it's just really, really good. And again, I think every actor does their character in a way that, they're all unique, but they're all the same. And they're all kids. They're all insecure. You mentioned Bender trying to put on this tough front. And, I think that's what age, meaning you and I, gotten older, you can kind of see that front at the beginning. You can kind of understand that, yeah, that's a front. People aren't like that normally. But when you're a kid, you don't know that. You're dumb to that. So you might fall for that front that maybe you and I wouldn't fall for now. But the fact that they have the time to sit, look at each other in the eye and say, this is my life. Oh, well, this is my life. Well, I thought you had this life. No, and they get to know each other. And while in theory it doesn't sound appealing, I think it's really, really appealing the way John Hughes makes this film. And again, tons of credit goes to the actors who played these roles, because it couldn't have been easy.
As we were talking about, I think I mentioned you like The Lighthouse is a hard movie to act because it's only two people. This case, we have really 5 principal characters. They're in every scene, and like I said, it was kind of a play. The characters got to breathe in this world for a while. I imagine as an actor, it was pretty rewarding because they actually got to write a lot about their characters. Like John Hughes had a script, but they're always changing things because they're like, I don't think they would say this at this point. So there's a lot of collaboration going on, and you could tell that they did get along, especially in like that dance scene at the end, where they're all dancing in. I don't know if you know the story behind that. It was originally supposed to be just Molly Ringwald dancing, and she said, this is very awkward. I don't want to be the only one dancing. So they all said they would dance too. That's why her moves are really good. Everybody else is just like messing around, doing stupid stuff.
That's cool. I had not heard that before. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool story behind this one. They actually like got a high school that had shut down, and they built a library. That's like the set, that because no library is that cool. And basically, John Hughes is filming this film and Ferris Bueller at the same time. And so that's kind of crazy. He just go from one shoot to the other. He's like, I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to go over here downtown, shoot that. And
interesting.
Because of that, I think the actors did get a lot of time just to hang out and just get that chemistry I think you need for something like this.
So let me ask you this, man. You're a teacher, and you see kids now. And, do you feel like it's a lot of the same? Like, do you feel like things don't really change, I mean, kids are still going to be kids. They're still going to assume stuff. They're still going to try to be territorial and all this kind of thing. Do you think that still exists in modern school?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of stuff from this film that is true, that's kind of timeless. Like teenagers, especially like the dudes, I think they feel like they always have to be the alpha. You see that a lot with Andrew, and I guess that's why Andrew and Bender get into it a lot early. Brian, he doesn't really care. He's just a nerd.
Yeah.
But they definitely like get one up on each other. That's why like Bender's always making fun of the others, or Andy's like, I'm tougher than you. So all that stuff's the same. Also like Allison, the sort of, I guess you call her the outcast. I mean, those kids are always around. There's always the people that feel like they don't belong. They're very quiet, and but at the same time, if you get to know them, they're really cool. Like, that's why watching it this time, she was actually my favorite character early on. Just because she's got such great mannerisms. Like, whenever the principal comes in, he's like, who took that screw out? And he questions everybody. He just looks at her, and she just puts her head on the table and goes, ah! Makes some weird noise. And I just love that. So I think there's definitely stuff that's timeless. Obviously, things are different now because of social media and all that. Plus, if they made this now, you probably couldn't. I mean, I probably wouldn't see an all-white cast. I don't think that would work in 2022, just because it's if a teenager's watching this and they're of a different color, they might not be able to connect with this movie as much.
Right. That's a good point. Well, I'm a huge fan of John Hughes, and it's funny you mentioned Ferris Bueller, because I really love that film. I think, I don't know, like what's your impressions on the way John Hughes writes, and what are your feelings on how he kind of creates this world, creates the Ferris world, but also this world? Because again, you're talking about a few hours in a school, and yet he creates this just really complicated world for these guys. I mean, that can't have been easy to do what he did for this film.
I think his best attribute is his writing. Because I think a lot of people, they try to do a high school movie, they're going to make either the kids sound stupid or they're going to make them sound like adults. And in this case, they sound like kids.
Exactly.
They sound like high schoolers. I mean, and even like I like the stuff he does with the principal and the janitor. I think that is a big part of this film too, is what happens to people over time. As Allison says, as you get older, your heart dies. And we're seeing that reflected in the principal, because he's like, man, what's happening with these kids these days? And then the janitor tells him, or Carl, the janitor, says, they haven't changed, you've changed. And I think that's pretty brilliant writing. I think that shows you that this man is wiser beyond his years. And I think he's got an awesome career. I'm going to steal something from Bill Simmons. He calls John Hughes the Larry Bird of filmmaking, because he has 10 good years and then he's done. Because he has nothing but hits in the 80s, and then he writes Home Alone, but then after that he's done. So what do you think about John Hughes?
I love John Hughes. I think he's fantastic. Again, I'm a huge fan of Ferris Bueller, and huge fan of this film. I mean, this film, to me, it represents a certain time in history, but I think, like I said, it definitely really shows what a kid is like at that age. And, nothing makes me feel older now. You mentioned social media, but nothing makes me feel older now to see people that I grew up with and went to high school have high school kids, like, almost graduate. I'm like, that shouldn't even be possible. It doesn't feel like it's been 20 years since we graduated high school. At least that's the way I feel. How about you, man? When you go to school now, does it feel like it's been 20 years since you've been out of the game, or?
No, not really. I mean, I guess for me, because I'm around high schoolers all the time, I think that helps me stay young.
Sure.
And I think that's a good thing. I do find myself sink into like the older self a lot. I think I'm getting more like my dad as I get older, which is a good thing and a bad thing. But this is something I always want to avoid. I never want to feel old. I never want to think I'm old, and because I don't really feel old. I mean, Or just showing you my new Jordans I got. I don't know many people my age that just go out and buy Jordans. So.
Well, I think that's the point. I think you should try to stay young. You should try to, not let yourself get too old, as you said. Now, that doesn't mean you shirk responsibilities and you just become a lazy person and don't do anything. Of course not. But I think you can be responsible and still have, a young at heart kind of thing. And that's the way I feel anyway. And, so much has changed since we've been out of school. And of course the big thing is probably social media, because it really wasn't even a thing when we graduated. And so people live by it now, and it's a big thing. And I think it's got its good things and its bad things. But I wonder sometimes if that, because there's so much, communication going on, if that puts more pressure on kids and that kind of thing.
It does. I think
I would imagine it would. Anyway.
There's definitely studies that show that kids nowadays have more anxiety than they've ever had.
And I believe it. I 100% believe it. But it's an interesting world that John Hughes creates with these characters, and the fact that they're so different, and yet they're so the same. And that's the thing that you figure out, or these characters figure out by the end of it, is yes, they may travel different paths and they may have different home lives and all that kind of thing, but they're still kind of the same. And I think it makes you think, we should be more patient with those people that we think are different, because they're really not. And this movie really just leaves you with a lot of thoughts, and I just find it very entertaining, yet also really inspiring to not quickly judge people. I mentioned that girl earlier, and you look back on stuff like that and you're like, I wish I hadn't been like that. I wish I wouldn't have said that. And I'm sure you can come up with stuff in high school or college or whatever, and you're like, I wish I'd have done this differently and whatnot. But you're young.
Wisdom.
That's
wisdom
exactly right.
happens over time, and I guess the characters in this film become more wiser because of their experience together.
Yep.
And I think that's a big thing it shows you through communication, learning how other people look at this world, and learning from other people. You can basically become wiser.
That's right.
It's kind of like if you think about no man is an island. If you were an island and you just had nothing but yourself to be with, how much more would you grow as a person? So I think that's great that these characters interacted. I guess finish up thinking, so do you think they hung out on Monday?
I was going to ask you that, because I love the ending. I think that's a perfect way to end it. We talked earlier about that other movie we talked about. I think this ending is perfect. I think with the song and with what they're saying, and the optimist wants to believe that they hung out after this. The optimist wants to believe that they all sat at the same table at lunch and just became this really close pack. Did it probably happen? I don't know. What about you? What do you think happened to the Breakfast Club post this Saturday situation?
I don't know. It's very tough. So originally when Brian brings it up, he's like, "Hey, what's going to happen if I come and talk to you?" And Claire, she's just like, "Yeah, I'm probably gonna ignore you just because your crew, my crew are totally different. My friends will make fun of me, all that stuff." So she gets into she's being honest there. But I think though, as time changes and they themselves change, maybe they did make a breakthrough here. And I actually want to think that there's an unknown sequel to this movie. Because it is called The Breakfast Club, and we do know that Bender is serving 2 months of continuous detention. Yeah. I want to say they all come back the next week and do detention together again.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, and the thing is, you and I went into high school the late 90s, early 2000s, and I ended up going to 2 high schools, but even back then, I felt like our schools, especially Colton, the band people were really popular at Colton, and yet you see all these movies back in the day, and band people are nerds, and they're the outcasts, and that kind of thing. But a lot of the band people were really popular people. And I've told people before, I hung out with band people because I was in the band. I hung out with other people. I felt like, at least in our time, stereotypes weren't the same as they might have been maybe even around this time period. Did you get that as well, or what do you remember?
I don't think so. I think it depends on what circle you were in. I think there was some people that were kind of wanting those labels, so they kind of like found this niche. It's like, guess what? I'm going to be that redneck. I'm going to drive my truck and hang out and wear belt buckles and all that stuff. I think there were people like that, and I think people that said, hey, I'm that band guy. This is my thing. I'm going to play drums and nothing but drums. I'm all about drums. But I do also think there was a lot of people that were well-rounded and just like try to do a bunch of different things. And I think that's the best thing to do.
You mentioned that about drums. People used to tease a guy that you and I both know from Coleman who was just obsessed with drums. I mean, like, obsessed. He's now a professional drummer, and I saw on his Instagram the other day, he's like in California and stuff, and I'm like, if he'd listened to those people and, thought he was a big nerd, he probably wouldn't have the career he has. So, there still was teasing and that kind of thing, but I'm so glad that Phil ignored all that and became what he became, because I think he's doing pretty good for himself, and I'm really proud of him, and I tell him that all the time. I think it's really awesome that he's doing what he loves, because we should all want that, we should all do that. And I think with this movie, it kind of encourages you to be who you are. I think, coming back around, it kind of encourages you to accept who you are and accept who they are and try to work with that, because you could actually have some good relationships, and had they not done that, had they all kept to themselves, then that wouldn't have happened.
Definitely. That's what it's all about. It's about making meaningful connections and challenging yourself. These kids, they learn these lessons, they apply them in their life, they're going to have an awesome time. And that's me, I guess, speaking as a teacher in that regard. So
there you go.
There we go. So that's The Breakfast Club. Great film. Watch it. It's rewatchable. You can watch it.
Definitely.
I guess this is my last thought. I was going to wrap it up, but this is a thought I had earlier.
Sure.
When I was thinking about this as a cable movie, I don't know if this movie is going to mean the same to this current generation, just because how are they going to find this movie? Unless you really liked Ferris Bueller and you want to check out some other John Hughes films, I don't really see somebody just having on this on streaming and saying, I'm going to watch this.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, for sure. I think because we're only a decade away from that, basically, it was a little bit more relatable on our part, whereas now, where we're 30 years away from it, it would be a little bit more of a jarring thing, and I agree with you that. But I guess I just would hope, and again, it's my romantic heart here going, I hope people would see this even as teenagers of today and go, I know a kid like that. I I hear kind of thing, and that they would try to be understanding and, because I still think there are a lot of lessons to learn from this film, and all of them definitely, a good thing to as we've said over and over, but I agree with you. I think it would be a little bit tougher for maybe a kid that's 16, 17 years old now to really relate to this film like we did anyway.
It's tough. But wrapping it up, challenge yourself, learn from people, challenge yourself, learn from movies.
What's your favorite John Hughes film, guys? What's one that you relate to? What's one you like? What's your favorite? Let us know on our social media. Go to Facebook.com, search BreakCaZt with a Z, also Twitter, and we'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, we might do one of those in the future, so definitely do that. And speaking of the future, we have a couple of films in the works right now. We're going to look at Django Unchained next week, Quentin Tarantino film.
Oh, yes.
We're also going to take a look at one that I really like from recent, and Superfosh hasn't seen, and that's Jojo Rabbit.
I'm looking forward to. I've been wanting to watch that movie, so I'm really excited about that. So stick around for that, guys. And until next time, I am the Superfosh. He is Steve Z, and we will see you guys next time on the Supercast.